Hey everybody, just got a bunch of firewood to process tomorrow and didn't really clean my saw yet from last time, so we're gonna get her cleaned up. I'm gonna show how I clean my saw up and sharpen the chain and all that. Obviously everyone has it different how they do it. Just gonna show how I do it. It's worked for me for a while. So we're just gonna get at it and see how we do things here. So forgive me again, I'm still kind of new at trying to do things with the camera and everything else. So I'm gonna kind of be doing things backwards here and try to change the camera angles I can. But so this is the 362 RCM, has the full wrap handle, obviously. I do a lot of felling, which you saw in some of the videos try to do it during the summer when it's kind of nicer out. There's some private areas that I go up and cut in, mainly Doug fir, since I get the lodge pole delivered to our place up in Helena. So the fir it's bigger to cut, it's dirtier, it's nastier. I don't really care for it. So the thing with the wrap handle on this one, usually the pro saws on the nut side, they're kind of molded into the cover. With this wrap handle one, it's not, so the nuts still come out on it. But the other nice thing with the lodge pole, which is the stuff we cut in our earlier videos, you know, with it being a soft pine, it doesn't make a huge mess when you're cutting and everything else. So as long as your chain's sharp, it tends not to be real dusty. You know, when you cut Doug fir kind of sucks. I'm not a big fan of cutting Doug fir because it's dirty and just nasty to cut. But I mean, cleaning a chainsaw is cleaning a chainsaw. You just take the covers off. I'm not going to get super deep into cutting this stuff or cleaning this stuff, sorry, as I do. But this is just kind of the basic what I do between processing wood. So got the cover off. I mean, nothing too spectacular. You can see some of the stuff that gets gummed up kind of right up in here. It's nothing too big. The other nice thing I like about the pro saws is it has the quarter turns, which come off the top here to make it a lot easier. I just got this saw actually earlier this year, or technically last year, I guess, towards in the winter. We just been cutting so much that I finally upgraded from my 271, which actually I can kind of show you on my wall here on where my 271 is. So my 271's kind of sitting up there. It's been winterized. I don't really use it that much. And I also have my splitting axe and hookaroon and stuff. But fortunately, it's all been staying up here because we've mechanized most of our stuff, so that makes it a lot nicer. The other thing too is the air cleaners. They use a lot the same with the pros and like the farm and ranch. I know they changed the style. This is the old paper style filter that I still have from the other one, but my 271, they even switched over to like this pleated filter, which does seem to work a lot better with that. But these, yeah, the quarter turns for the top is pretty nice. But you can see, I mean, it's just your standard dust and everything else, like cutting anything else. So it's not too bad. Typically what I'll do is I'll just do a full choke on it, and I'll go over to the air compressor and blow everything off, which I'm not going to shoot the video doing that because it's just noisy and it's not very exciting. So I'll get that done and I'll be back to you guys in a minute. Okay, we're back. Again, I'm not going to do a real big deep clean like I do a lot of times because we got so much cutting to do tomorrow that I'll probably do a good clean after that. We got 4 cords on order, mainly just rounds this weekend. We're not going to be doing much splitting, so we're gonna be just doing a lot of cutting tomorrow, and we'll have some video from that. And I'll try to take the camera with me too and do some video from when we do the deliveries and stuff, which is not the most exciting thing in the world, but you know, kind of gives you this, be able to see some of the scenery we have here. I mean, it's a gorgeous place out here, so it's always something nice to see with the scenery. But Now the drum is kind of a little bit on the tight side, so I think I'm going to pop the snap ring off on the sprocket and get this cleaned out. I apologize in advance. I realize I say a lot, and I'm trying to break myself of that habit, so bear with me on that. I'm trying to do my best on that. Again, this whole new thing of narrating while I'm doing this is kind of new, so I'm still kind of getting used to that. Just pop the snap ring off here, and this will get the drum off and the sprocket and kind of clean up inside here a little bit. And there's also the roller bearings in here, which are kind of an important thing you don't want to lose. The other thing that a lot of guys don't do, I shouldn't say don't do, is some people kind of overlook. So if you can see, the lighting's not the greatest, but you get a film of sawdust and whatnot inside this drum. You can kind of see the difference in it now. Kind of important to get that out. It'll take a while before it'll start giving you issues, but it will eventually start giving you problems down the road. So, I mean, it's not that hard to get it cleaned out. And I try to take the drum off about every other time, or it depends on how much I cut. So we got this off. Might as well get this cleaned out. I'm actually just going to blow that out with a little bit of air real quick, and we'll get that. We got that cleaned up a lot nicer now, so what we'll do is get this drum cleaned up a little bit more. Get going on that. It's been just kind of a random note while I'm getting this stuff cleaned up. It's been kind of a warm winter so far for us. It's January 31st right now, and it was 53 on my way home today, which about this time last year we were easily in the negatives, and it's not uncommon for out here to get in the negatives during the day and stay in the negatives. So the other thing I do, and I don't know if it's necessarily recommended or not, but it works pretty well, is I'll get some sprayed grease, and typically I'll use like fluid film. I'll spray the roller bearing down and this other stuff just to kind of give it a little bit of something to slide on, you know, as I put it back together, and just give it a little bit of extra lube. So we get that all back together on there. The other thing you want to make sure you remember too is you get your chain brakes off before you try to put this back on, because if it's not, you're going to fight it and feel like a real idiot once you go to put it all back together and can't figure out why you can't get it on. So that's another important thing to try to do. Oh, yeah, see how nicely that freewheels? That's a lot better. So we got that back together. Throw the sprocket back on, get it kind of cleaned up a little bit. Back on there, and then same thing with this kind of washer. You can see how it gets some crap on the inside and outside of it. So we'll get that cleaned up and put that all back together. And we just about have the power head cleaned up good enough for what we're gonna do tomorrow. Then we'll get the sharpening the chain, which sharpening the chain, I've watched a lot of videos on Buck and Billy Ray on how he does that, and he's, I think, by far the best at sharpening chains, and he explains it really well too. So learned a lot on hand filing from him on that. But I don't hand file. I shouldn't say I don't hand file. I don't do it the traditional way every time. A lot of times what I'll do is use the Stihl 2-in-1 sharpener, which I'll show you here shortly. I know the Morgans kind of use that as well, and they really like it. I didn't really get the idea from them on that. I actually had a friend of mine, Mickey, back in Ohio, that kind of turned me onto that last time he came out. I never even actually heard of it. I would just hand file before and he turned me on to that 2-in-1. That thing's great. So we'll show that here shortly, but got this all back together. It turns nice. No weird noises or anything. Turn the chain brake on, it gets that. So just checking where the oiler, you know, your oiler's right there. That's nice and clean. No crap or anything in the way of that. So we're good there. Don't really have much sawdust in there, so that's good. Cover, I mean, gets a little bit of garbage in it, but it stays fairly clean. I'm all kind of dirty and nasty right now. I just put airbags on the back of my firewood truck and changed the oil on it, so I'm kind of gross from that. But so we got that all back together. This is blowing out pretty well. Get this all put back together, and we'll get to sharpening the chain here shortly. But yeah, when we first really started getting heavy into the wood this year, my dad had a 251 and a 291 still. It's the Farm and Ranch, and I've had my 271 for quite a few years, and it's done well, but we were starting to get into the 30, 25 to 30 core volume, and I just needed to upgrade something a little better. And this 362 with the M-Tronic has just been a badass saw so far, so I'm really happy with it. The other thing we got too is the cover. It gets pretty gross. The other nice thing with the Pro Saw is like this stuff comes off. Magnesium cover. I like it a lot. Again, I'm not going to get into a deep clean with it. I'm going to scrub out some of this stuff here. Then I'll just hit it with some compressed air, get it blown out. Then we'll do a deep clean on it probably after we do all this cutting tomorrow. So I'll get some of this stuff out just by hand, blow it out with the compressed air, and that'll be good enough for what we're doing tomorrow. We don't really get into too much dirt or grit or anything else because we're kind of in a controlled environment. We're not up in the mountains cutting or anything else. So I'm gonna blow this out real quick and we'll get everything back together and start sharpening the chain. So the other thing I'll kind of touch on too is kind of what I have planned for the channel. It's not going to be all chainsaws and firewood and that kind of stuff. I call it the Indies Outdoor channel because, well, I'm not super creative all the time, but we do a ton of camping. We have a 29-foot travel trailer, and we do a ton of camping and things like that during the summer, and hiking and various other things. We live right by Canyon Ferry Lake here in Montana, so we camp at the lake a ton and stuff like that. So I want to kind of give an insight. I know there's a bunch of people that don't necessarily get to enjoy the things that we get to enjoy all the time out here. On a side note, I'm not originally from Montana. We moved here about 5 years ago or so, and yeah, we moved about 5 years ago from Northeast Ohio. My wife and I were both born and raised there. Just wanted to come out and give Montana a try. So we're kind of transplants from here. So it's we've seen kind of both ends, East Coast and West Coast. So it's kind of a fun adventure. The bar, back to what we were doing here. The bar, I'm just gonna kind of clean up a little bit. It's getting kind of gross here, but it's not too bad. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll take some brake parts cleaner and just kind of lightly dust it with the brake parts cleaner. Let it soak in for a minute, and that'll get a lot of this residue off here. Kind of let it sit for a minute. Do that. Try to adjust my camera angle here a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So it actually starts cutting it pretty quick. It doesn't take very long to do that. So again, I'm not going to do a real big deep clean on it this time, but just get some of the crap off of here. Then the other thing too is to make sure we clean out the oiling port there. But you can even see, I think you can see it on here. It actually does take this stuff off pretty well for the most part. If you really let it soak and do it a couple times, you can get the bar pretty well cleaned up. The other thing you probably notice is how scratched up the bar is. And that is actually mainly from, we have our little magnetic fiberglass pole measuring sticks that we use. I know there's a lot of guys online and some videos and on Facebook and whatnot that, you know, there's an ongoing debate on using those measuring tools, or, you know, a lot of guys are like, it's just firewood, it's no big deal, which, I mean, you're right if you're just cutting for your wood pile and stuff like that. But our customers, especially out here, wood is a pretty main source of heat, that and propane, just because there's not mass distribution for the most part in the rural areas for natural gas. So a lot of people use wood as their main source. There's actually people who heat their house solely on wood. So there's quite a bit of demand for it, but there's also a lot of competition because there's so much public land out here that you get your firewood permit, or some people don't even do that, and they go up and cut wood up in the mountains and sell it for $30 out of the back of their truck or something. Then you got some beer money for the weekend. We don't do that. We buy it by the truckload, and I also cut on private property. But anyway, I got the Stihl, kind of the depth gauge, but on the depth gauge, what a lot of people don't realize is on the end here, this little rounded edge, that's for actually cleaning your bar out. And again, there's a ton of videos that show it, but I mean, you just take the end like this and you just run it down your bar right in the groove here, and you'll see all the crap that just kind of falls out of it. And that's just all the pitch and sawdust mixed with the oil and everything. So you do a couple rounds of that and that'll get most of that out on here. And one of the more important things you need to do, the other thing on a side note, if you don't have one of those tools or anything else, if you just get some metal tie wire, especially on the 3/8 bar, it'll fit right down in that groove and you can just clean it up that way. So that works really well for that too. But I like this tool, it works really well for that. So once I get that cleaned out and I get the pinholes cleaned out on here too, and make sure the guide and everything is cleaned out. But the important thing, especially on your bars, is you got a little hole right there. And this one's kind of slanted with the Pro saws, but the Farm and Ranch ones are just round. There's one on each end, and that's so when you flip your bar, but that's where your bar gets your oil. So it's really important to do that. Once I clean out the guide rail, then what I'll do is I'll take compressed air and blow that hole out, and that'll do a lot better. So I'm gonna go do that real quick. I don't know if the camera can show it, but you can kind of see in here now how much cleaner that is. You know, he has the nice groove that goes right in there. So that's really important to make sure you get oil into your bar. Then the other thing I do, and I don't, again, know if it's really necessary, but I've been doing it for a while. You know, your nose of your bar, I usually take some more fluid film, or Deep Creep's the other one that works really well, is I just spray a little bit in there on the sprocket. Then I'll work it into that sprocket. And you can, a lot of times you'll feel it loosen up some. Again, it's not super necessary, but it also helps kind of push some of the garbage out. And you can actually feel it once you get it on there, how much better it turns and cleans it out. So again, I don't think it's 100% probably necessary, but it's something I've always kind of done, and it works really well. And you kind of see a result in it. So it's kind of what I do there. So now we got the bar cleaned up, power head cleaned up. So what we'll do is we'll get the bar put back on. I just actually squared up the bar not too long ago, so it's not in bad shape. So we'll get this put back on. And I apologize if I'm fumbling around, because again, I'm doing this backwards, try to get the camera angle right. So I don't have a chainsaw chain grinder. For no particular reason other than I just prefer to hand file it. And I also don't go through a ton of chains. I've had this saw for a while, and This is still the original chain I got with it. I have two other ones for it. But what I generally do, and again, that doesn't mean it's necessarily right, is I'll wear out this chain first before I go going through my other ones. Just because, I don't know, again, I have no particular reason for it. That's just kind of the way I do it. The other thing too is chain tension's always a thing for everybody. Buck and Billy Ray has a really good video that shows kind of chain tensioning, and what my local Stihl dealer in Helena, which is Mountain Stihl, they supply a lot of the loggers and stuff around here with that, with saws and whatnot. They I was asking the guy there when I got this saw on proper chain tension, and he laughed. He's like, I could bring in 12 different loggers in here and they all give you a different tension. So okay, so we got that on. We'll get the side cover put back on. Again, this is typically not this awkward, but I'm trying to get a camera angle here for it, so I'll get that back on here. We'll be good. I'm gonna flip this around, so we'll be back in just... Okay, so we got that back on. It was a lot less awkward just to do it that way. So we got it back on. Our chain tension's actually not terrible, but the other thing too is to make sure, what a lot of guys forget to do is, so you'll see the bar, hold the power head down, the bar will go up and down when you don't have it tightened down. So the big thing is just to pull it down. I generally try to run my chain a little bit on the looser side because it does tend to cut a little bit faster when you have it that way. I've always been a Stihl guy, just mainly because that's always what I've ever used. And actually, I'm in the process someday when I have a free 10 minutes or so, I'm in the process of putting my, actually it was my grandfather's, who I never got to meet. He passed away when my dad was younger, but his old saw, it actually still runs. I'm just getting it kind of cleaned up and want to get it put back together. So that might be another video for some other time, getting working on this thing. But anyway, back to this. Put the glove on and check our chain tension, which I don't hate it. Yeah, that's not bad. I can do that. We'll find out tomorrow when we get her running, because all the kids are sleeping right now. We actually, I'm sure you saw on our channel picture that we have 4 kids, my wife and I. We've been together, it'll be 10 years this year. So I'll do another video sometime down the line and explain, kind of go through that a little bit more. But so we got this. I'm going to reposition the camera to show how I sharpen with the 2-in-1. And we'll go from there. So I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so again, I am not an expert at this. I've just, again, the way I do it here works for me. May not work the best for some people or some opinions. It's fine. There's 9 million different ways of doing this. This just works for me well. I'm gonna blow this off real quick. I got a bunch of filings and all that. So usually what I'll do is I'll just pick a chain or a tooth on here, and that'll be the one I start with. So I think we'll just start with this guy here. And yeah, so this 2-in-1, I'm a pretty big fan of it. I was definitely a traditionalist before I started using this, but once my buddy got me turned on to it, it's so nice because, you know, it does your rakers and the tooth. Oh, lost my camera. Let me see if I can get a new spot here. Yeah, let me get this back again and we'll get right back. All right, since we have our little camera snafu there, so we're just gonna get this other side sharpened up here. That way we can go in and call it a night. It's getting pretty late, and I got to get up early to cut wood. Alright, so I think we're pretty good here for what we're cutting tomorrow. Again, I think that's the last time I'm going to be sharpening this one. So it's kind of what we got going on here tonight. Should be ready to cut tomorrow. We're going to get up early. It's going to be super windy tomorrow. It's almost going to be 60, which is very odd this time of year, but you'll have that, I guess. A little hard on the firewood business, but still getting orders coming in, so that's a plus. We got this all ready to go, and we'll get it in the morning, and I'll shoot some video. We'll have plenty of video cutting tomorrow and whatnot. So really appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. Oops, sorry, hanging out with me tonight. We do have my two motivated partners down here. That's oh, hey, there we go. That's Ollie. That's Hoosier. Hoosier is our lab. She's 14 years old actually. And there's Ollie. So you can see real motivated group there. So appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. Big shout out to my my old buddy Ben with D&D Trucking. So I will catch you guys later, and we'll see you tomorrow. Night, guys.